This is Disclosure Now, with Arcane World, a show where we expose the truths that are nefariously hidden from humanity. Today the show features Daryl James, Joseph Powell, and Susan Long for a roundtable discussion on the Navy's secret space program known as Solar Warden.
Welcome to Disclosure Now. We are having the first, as far as I know, Solar Warden roundtable discussion. Susan's just gonna have to join the chat again. I can't keep restarting this. Anyway, this is literally probably the fourth time we've restarted this, and Susan left as soon as it started again. I don't know what to do other than just continue with the interview. I can't keep doing this like technical difficulties stuff. I just need to do the interview. So the whole point of this interview is to basically collaborate our testimony, compare notes, compare what we remember, and just kind of solidify what Solar Warden is, what they do, because even though this is our own human history, you can't look it up in a history book. You can't read about it. The information isn't out there. And I feel like because we have the knowledge inside of us, I feel like it's our responsibility to get the knowledge out there and make sure that people know about this. Welcome back, Susan. I'm so glad you made it back. So without further ado, I guess I'll introduce myself, what I remember, and we'll just start. We'll just go to Daryl, to Susan, to Joseph after that. So where my connection to Solar Warden is I cleaned a school, and I figured out, and I should also state that I probably have more alters and more connections to Solar Wardens than I actually remember. But the memories that I do have are connected to a school that I worked at. And I remember that the kids there, I remember training a lot of the kids. I remember seeing them as adults and stuff like that on Centurion 5, which is a planet that I was involved with through time travel stuff. It's a colony that got set up by Solar Warden basically as a military outpost. And those are some of the memories that I have as far as Solar Warden. And I'll hand over the candle to you, Daryl.
Yeah, I got into Solar Warden through the Navy. I was in the United States Navy, and I was stationed at a base in Newquay, England, or actually it was like St. Morgan, England, but it was called RAF St. Morgan, JMF RAF St. Morgan, and it was an underground base, and I wound up escorting some civilian workers from the corporation Siemens into the underground base, and I walked through something that looked like a metal detector, and they told me I had really high IQ and high scores, and they would like me to join Solar Warden. And yeah, that's how I got into it. I was approached by the executive officer, which is like the second in command of a military base, and he told me all about it. And,
so I think it's important to point out that this was physically in the here and now. You actually were in the military, and you were recruited very classically, not in the way where it's like a MyLab experience, a military abduction experience. So could you maybe go into like how that differentiates from like some other people's testimony, and how I know that you said in other interviews that we did that you witnessed that they do seem to be just kind of taking people.
Yeah, I mean, well, well, first they kind of tested me after they saw my scores. I really didn't know what was happening. And yeah, this is just like me talking to you right now. I was working on this military base, and yeah, they had me, I don't know, watch this. It looked like they call them drones, but it was like one of those little small grays. It was like a light brown, kind of black eyes, big black eyes. It took it apart at like a Dell computer, like just a regular old Dell computer, very quickly. It did it like a machine. And I think it was just they were just gauging my reaction to see if I would run away. This happened at like the quarterdeck of the base, which is like the lobby of the base. And then that following Monday, the executive officer came to my workstation, which was like a garage. Like I worked in a garage, like away from the underground base, and asked if he could talk to me, which is very uncommon because, you know, the executive officer will usually call you to their office. They won't come to you where you work. And yeah, he asked to go for a walk, and he started telling me all these things about, I don't know, Project Solar Warden, and Gary McGinney when he hacked into NASA. This was like that happened from like 2002 and 2003, and this was 2003, so it was only like less than a year ago, and it was in the UK area. And he said it's all true about, extraterrestrial officers. He hacked into NASA and found all these social security numbers of ranks of extraterrestrial officers and pictures of a cigar-shaped craft of the moon. And he said the only reason they didn't press any charges against them is because if they did extradite him and charge him, he would be able to call witnesses, and that would blow the whole lid off the Solar Warden. So they kept it, they just let him go. And yeah, he told me I would become like a pilot of a 4-kilometer long starship, and it was just very a matter of fact. And we were just talking and walking, and he was telling me all this stuff. And yeah, it's just, I can remember it was in the middle of the day, and I can remember the sidewalk we were walking down, and it was we were on base. And this is before, I think they went back, and I think they went further back and wiped my memory from there. But I mean, it was still just like a very, very normal memory, just being on Earth. But yeah, and I mean, it was probably one of those things where, even if I did remember it, I forgot, like I forgot about it almost. It was like, I remember the guys came up to me the next day whenever I first saw a little drone, and they said, like, what did you think? The guys that worked the underground base. And I said, what? And they said, like big black eyes, long spindly fingers, kind of creepy looking. And I was like, oh yeah, and I forgot all about it. And because it was just so unbelievable. So, that it was just something that I really didn't want to think about any further. But yeah, it just happened very matter of fact. And just like, it was almost like a job interview, the way it worked for me.
And then was it like a 20 and back scenario where you got displaced throughout time and put right back?
Yeah, that's what he told me. He said that, we'll put you in the program. You do 20 years. We'll send you back in time 20 years, age regress you 20 years, wipe your memory, and you'll wake up in bed like nothing happened. And yeah, I remember one time being in the barracks, and I was like talking to a guy. This was like a year after I joined the program. I already came back and everything else. And there was this English guy I knew who, I don't know, we were playing like video games or something. It was like 1 a.m. on like a Saturday. And he looked out the window and he said, look, like his couch was right by like a window, and we looked out the window, and there was somebody in like a black hoodie, just like a sweatshirt, black hoodie with the hood up, black gloves, black, pants, and he was carrying a body, it looked like, in a rolled up blanket. And I said, should we help him? And because it looked like he was carrying a corpse or something like that. And like I didn't know what was happening. And the guy worked in the underground base, and he said no. He said we can't help him. It's too late for him. Like we can't help him now. So that was like a guy coming back from the 20-year and back who already joined, and they were just bringing him back to his bed to wake up in his bed. That's like how it happened.
And that you said that you normally sleep. I remember you said something like you normally sleep with your socks on or something like that, and when you woke up, you just knew it wasn't right. What was it that there's some discrepancy that was abnormal where you even though they mind wiped you, you're like, wait a minute, this is weird.
No, I had a chair in my barracks. I lived in the barracks on base, and the chair was facing towards my bed. It was like pulled out from the desk, facing towards my bed, and my uniform was laid on top of it. It was like, first my slacks, and then my top, and then the tie, and then the shoes were tucked up underneath the chair. So I was like, yeah, I would have put my clothes back in the, in the closet, and I had my socks on. I had like black dress socks, like, nylon socks. And yeah, I still had my t-shirt on, and I had my socks on, and it was just, yeah. And I woke up, and I was very toned. I was in like very good shape. I was like very muscular. My hair was like burned.
That's
I had
wild.
like burned inches in my hair. My chest hair was burned and stuff like that. And yeah, and it was really bizarre. And it was just like, yeah. And I don't know. It's difficult to explain because it was almost like I was on the moon. And I remember I had the first day of memory. First 2 days of memory was perfect. And then it was just like I kind of dozed off and went to sleep, and I woke back up and I was back in England. And that was very strange. And yeah, there was a guy waiting outside of my room in the barracks, and he said, congratulations, you made it. And I said, what do you mean? He said, 20 years is a long time. A lot of people don't make it back. And I missed Saturday. I joined, I went on watch and joined the program on Friday, and I didn't wake up till Sunday. So I missed Saturday. And all the watches were on Friday, and I guess that's why they did it, is because in case you missed a day of work, or, in case it took you a little bit longer to, I don't know, age regress or something like that. So I missed the entire day, and that was bizarre. The whole thing was weird. I just got a brand new haircut, because I joined a new command, and you get skin on the back, and then it slowly, gradually fades up to longer hair on top. But then it looked like somebody had shaved my head with like a guard. You know what I mean? It was just like a little kid shaved my head. Like
So basically, it was kind of sloppy. Like you feel like I feel like that if they really wanted you to not remember and keep this covert, they probably could have been a little more covert about it. But I want to move on to Susan. What do you remember about Solar Warden? How did you realize that it exists and that you're a part of it?
I've been having memories all along because I was a police officer and detective in the here and now, and I remember, this was in the 90s. I woke up screaming and I was clutching onto my shoulder. I'd been shot in my shoulder here and my thigh. And my husband at the time woke me up and he says, "Oh, you're having cop death dreams." And it was some German guy that shot me. And I believe that was a time where I was put right back in my body so that when I woke up, I could still feel the pain, the burning and everything going through my shoulder and my thigh. I also remember when, this is pretty fucked up too. When that husband, he died after he broke his neck and he suffered for like 8 months as a quadriplegic and died. And when right after I buried him, I don't know if it was a combination of migraine medicine I was taking and the alcohol, because I know I was drunk, and I remember being up there and somebody kidnapped me. I was on a gurney. I'm not sure if I was on the moon base or what, but I was in some kind of medical room and I was screaming, "You mother effers, kidnapped the detective, take me the fuck back home." And I was swinging at everybody, and they were telling me they were going to bring my husband in, and I was like, "Fuck you, motherfuckers! I just buried my husband." And who did they bring in but Emart? So I punched him in the face, and I guess he was crying, and he left and I remember hearing people saying, "She must be your wife because she hates you too." And yeah, I was mad. I didn't know who the hell this guy was that they brought in. So I hit him in the mouth as hard as I could. And I was fighting everybody. But I knew I was kidnapped and I was a police officer and, I was a detective and I was really mad. And finally in 2015, when I saw one of these Corey Good things, I'm like, these aren't fucking dreams I'm having. I'm being kidnapped. I never joined the military. I mean, I was in detectives and I would do some drug interdiction with the military, and I flown with the Guard and used their stuff, and with the Marines and the DEA and the FBI and a whole bunch of other people, but I never joined the military. So I have memories of being in Nachtwaffen, Kruger. They took me for everybody.
Yeah, it's me too, and I know Joseph as well. We get used in quite a few different programs. They kind of use you for everything that you're worth. I would imagine Daryl too. Like I don't know, but I'm pretty sure you also have experience with Nachtwaffen and stuff too. So it's like there's a lot of crossover, and it gets confusing because there'll be a version of you working for Nachtwaffen, an alter, and then another version of you working for Solar Warden, and they don't exactly get along. So it's kind of like you're your own enemy. You're fighting. It's very strange how these programs work. But yeah, thank you for that testimony. Is there anything you wanted to add to that before we go to Joseph?
Shoot. Well, that was just Solar Warden stuff, because at this point I have memories of 12 plus contracts, you want to call them. So yeah, it's like, how old are we? Because we've gone back and forth so many times. And I actually still think at this point, I went meta in a 1940s or 50s classroom out here in the Midwest, and I'm not from the Midwest and here and now, I'm from the East Coast. And I disappeared out of that timeline, and they also did time travel stuff too. And I'm pretty sure that was Solar Warden, but I don't know.
Well,
I don't know. I can go on about it. You want to go to the next person?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your testimony, and we'll definitely get back to you for more information on your memories and the stuff that you remember. Joseph, I guess same thing. Just introduce yourself and how you got memories of being in Solar Warden and what it is and everything else.
Okay. Well, my name's Joseph. The way like a lot of this started for me was I had like when I was younger, when I was a kid, I remembered getting like taken out of class, and like I was asked questions first by my teacher, and then I got taken out of class, and they did this testing on us, like all the kids that were there, and then they started doing some other stuff where they had us close our eyes and play these games and stuff like that. After that had taken place, like I remember like we would have like nap times and stuff, and then like it's like when we would have our nap times, they would activate our altars and have us like walk out front, like everybody that got picked, which was like a small group of us compared to all of us that were there at the school. And we would get in this white van. There would be two guys that would be there, and they were dressed, they were in dress clothes and stuff like that. Like they had khaki pants and white dress shirt, stuff like that. But I think like their sleeves they had short sleeves on, and I just remember like coming to when this would happen. It's like me and my altar that I had would like transition where like they would drop into the background and I would come to the surface from time to time. And I had memories of like getting in the van, or going to the restroom. Like I'd get up and say I was going to the restroom. Like when we had a teacher that was just filling in for our regular teacher, because our regular teacher that we had like altars and would switch when all the stuff was going on. But when we get in the white van, we would be taken on the freeway towards LAX, and then from there we would end up in this like vacant garage, and then we would be taken to this abandoned mall, this internal abandoned mall, and like I found this place and everything like that, but I never really talked about it. I remember like training with other kids and stuff, and I remember meeting like some Joint Chiefs of Staff there. I didn't know who they were at the time until now, but I recognized their faces and stuff. And from that point, I remember like we would be training and stuff, and I had memories of, like where it was like in real time. Like I would be there and training, and then I'd just pop out basically and go back into the backdrop. But I remember like at some point, like I started, like it freaked him out because I started like I got like a flat top haircut at one point and freaked out the guy that would pick me up. And me and this guy, I don't know who he was really still, but he never liked me, and we always got in like arguments and shit, and he was like highly abusive. But I just remember at some point, he had asked me why I did that, and I had explained that I just wanted to get that haircut, and it freaked him out. But after that, I remember like where I lived, because I lived in the middle of the desert, like when I stopped going to that school later on, like they would come and pick me up where I lived at, because normally both my parents would be working, so I'd be there by myself. And they would just basically, I would get tired. I would feel like I was getting tired, and then I would just pass out. But then it would be like, I remember coming to and like standing in front of this gate and stuff. But before that had happened, I got picked up. Like I walked outside for some reason, and I ended up getting taken by this craft. And then like I blacked out, and then I ended up coming to where like I was walking through this area, and there was like guys wearing military uniforms, and it wasn't even on Earth. It was like on some kind of space station from what I recollect now. But it was like they had like these changing centers where like everybody was changing out of their clothing, and like their clothing was being placed into these buckets. And then after that, like we got taken to a different area where like it's been explained before, where like you lay on this table, and then they put this plastic over you, and then it suctions to you, and like you start suffocating. But then they like cut this hole open, and then like they put this thing on your mouth. I remember there being like grays there. It was kind of weird. But after that, it's like they cryogenically froze my body, and then I think that's when they would do the transfer from like you to the clone that they used. But I remember like later on, like after I got returned, I remember getting dropped off. Like they didn't just drop me off like in a bed. Like they literally, I was like, they were dropping me off where I was standing at, but I had woken up before they could put me back on the ground. And like, I just remember, I know I was awake because I got like, I ended up falling, and like I could feel like the pain of being, it shot my legs hitting the ground and then like falling back, and like the dirt that was on the ground and stuff. So it freaked me out because like I ended up seeing that ship, and like I just remember feeling like the emotions from whoever was piloting the ship freaking out because I had seen them. And then after all that happened, that like it was like later on that night, because I ended up having like getting picked up by like 2 other craft, and I was like, the last one freaked me out even worse. So I ran in and hid, under a blanket because I was just a kid and stuff. But I remember like that night I started having these crazy memories come back, like being on a ship and dealing with certain individuals and stuff like that I didn't even know. And I just remember later on, like the next day, it was like the next day or like 2 days later, like I had gotten picked up, and it freaked them out, like because I'd come to and I was like pulling on the chain because I had this chain and lock on the gate where the entrance was to the property I lived on. And like the guy that normally would pick us up for training and stuff was like pissed because I wouldn't get into the van. And like he got even madder because he had to like jump over the fence, and I was telling him I didn't want to go anymore, and I just remember like it's weird because I just remember consistently when it came to like Solar Warden, like my alter John and I would like fluctuate where I would come to the surface and people would know it was me versus my alter because of the way I would interact with them. And they'd be like, no, or they'd be like, oh shit, it's happening again, So that was just a weird outcome.
Didn't you have a neighbor who witnessed you getting picked up by one of these white vans? You want to go into that a little bit?
Yeah. So the time, so after I had come back from doing one of my 20 and backs, I'm pretty sure they took me for a second one at this point, but when I had come back, they had picked me up with all the kids that we were all older at this point, but all the kids that I had trained with and basically gone into this program with, they were in the van, and I was trying to get out. Like I said, I was trying to open the gate, but the gate was locked. Like they had this altar that was trying to get out, and I couldn't. So I ended up getting into a scuffle with the guy that would pick us up, and I ended up going with him because he helped me hop over the railroad tie fence that we had. So I ended up hopping over and going to get in the van, and like he had walked up behind me because he had hopped over and like was screaming at me, and like I think he slapped me in the back of the head. And there was a neighbor that I had that worked with my stepdad, and he had watched this happen, and it freaked him out because he had never seen anybody talk to me like that or anything like that. So I had ended up getting in the van and leaving. And then when I had come back, it was like a couple weeks, like a week later or something like that. I was in a conversation with him, and he was asking who they were. And he was like, that's so weird. Like, do your parents let people talk to you like that and do stuff like that to you? And I was like, what? And I was like, I didn't even really conversate about it. It was like something happened to where I just switched, and I was like, oh, they're just a friend of the family. And he was like, he basically was saying like, oh, they let your friends they let family friends just
your
like
alter came out and covered. Your alter came out and covered for the situation is what it sounds like.
And like I never brought it up again until I think it was like my first interview I did. And like shortly after that, within like 2 weeks, like this guy ended up like passing away. And from what I found now, I guess he had a heart attack or something like that, which is crazy. But it was like 2 weeks after I did my public interview.
They can do that with a direct energy weapon.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it happened. I just know that like he ended up dying right after. And like I never even said his name. I just stated that he lived across the way from me. And like he didn't even live in that area, I guess. But it's crazy, like that how quickly that happened. And it was like what got me was when for instance, like I was watching Gaia and I saw one of the speakers that was on there, And like when he showed the photo of the abandoned mall, and then like showed a photo of the office that they had, where they had this recruiter that would sit there and he would like give you a stack of papers to sign. Like I remembered that in real time. I just pushed it down, and when I saw that, it freaked me out. You know, so that's basically how a lot of this started, where I started getting other memories back and things. But yeah, so
Yeah, that's a lot of information there. Thank you for that. I guess one thing I wanted to touch upon is, to me, it sort of seems like, Daryl, when you talk about Solar Warden, they seem like they're a lot nicer to you than than what I remember. For instance, I guess a good question. I guess just to kind of get a broad perspective from each individual, and we'll start with Daryl and go around the way again. What is a Solar Warden to you? What's Solar Warden? We're gonna start with you, Daryl.
I mean, it was explained to me like, you know, that same guy, the executive officer, was telling me about it, and I guess they were what do you call that? Funneling money from the Star Wars program, which was like an old Ronald Reagan thing, and it was supposed to shoot down nuclear missiles from Russia, like satellites, using satellites and lasers to shoot down nuclear missiles. And they took all that money and they just funneled it all into Solar Warden, and that's how Solar Warden like came to be. And yeah, like as far as what I was told, like just talking to the guy, and as far as I remember, it was more like I mean, guarding the solar system, I guess you could say. Like it's under lockdown right now. I remember what he told me, like before I left the Navy. I spoke to him again before leaving. Yeah, and he told me that this solar system is under lockdown, and you know, Solar Warden is a big part of it. But it's also like a joint task force almost with other ETs, like positive ETs that are finally trying to help us. I remember like the Arcturians being there, I guess what you call them. I don't know their true name. I don't remember their true name, but the deep blue skin, bald head, they were helping us. I think they're ninth density beings, very high density. But I remember like Nordics too, and I was with the Nordics.
The tall
yeah,
whites.
I saw a lot of different things. Yeah, but I mean, it was like, I don't know. It's difficult to explain. It's almost like people try to give it like a good and evil thing, and it's good and evil and like that higher consciousness, that higher density. It really doesn't. That's more of a third density thing. Like fourth and fifth density, they don't really think that way. They think more like positive and negative. One can't live without the other. One can't exist without the other. It's just the way things are. And even the most positive of beings aren't without negative traits, and even the most negative beings aren't without positive traits. And yeah, I mean, and a big part of it was, you know, you have to do what's best for your people, your group, and like I remember asking Robert before I even joined the program, like, you know, would I be able to have children? He said, yeah, with your scores, you'll be expected to have children. And I said, well, will I ever be able to see them again? And he said, no. And it's just kind of like, I don't know, it's just a sacrifice you make. And it sounds cruel. It sounds cruel in this density, but I mean, ETs do it a lot. You know what I mean? The positive ETs, it's just the way things are. But I mean, I don't know. It's just they accept things like that a lot easier than we do. They accept things like death a lot quicker than we do. They accept losing people a lot quicker than we do. You know what I mean? Their mourning process is maybe 3 days long. You know, and then they're not really over it, but they just go on with life. And that's the way it is. But I mean, I don't know. A lot of people go into about, you know, I mean, the military itself isn't that, you know, inhumane. It isn't humane to, you know, not just the enemy, but its own people as well. You know, you're treated as property, you know, and that's what you are. You're government property. And, you know, and yeah, I mean, there's slavery and, you know, you are property, you know, but I mean, and it's not right, but in our world, but like with ETs and things like that, that's kind of like a big part of the universe, how it works. You know what I mean? It sounds cruel and stuff to us, but you know, a kind of a slave trade and stuff like that, finding the best people and getting them no matter what to work on your side. Because these are beings that live thousands of years. So these beings, they see the big picture, you know,
Mhm.
and you know, it sounds
Our
cruel.
lifespans have been artificially shortened because they're scared of us.
Oh yeah, yeah, they're afraid of our true potential, and yeah, we're definitely. And that was another thing I was told, just like in this guy's office, is they poison us all kinds of ways through vaccines or air or water or food, and yeah, it all causes us to age prematurely. We should live at least like 700-800 years, I would think. But I mean, these other ETs, they've augmented themselves through generations, and they can live thousands of years now.
And they also can just go from body to body like it's just an avatar. Like a lot of these ETs can do that.
Yeah, yeah. Like I was told I was a clone. I was told that I was killed like the third day I was on Mars, and that was kind of like earth shattering. And I kind of have the opinion of, well, what's the point of any of this if this isn't the real me? Like I didn't understand what he meant by that at first. And this was the executive officer again. He said they were able to salvage your consciousness, and I said, well, what does that mean? He said your soul. If that makes you feel any better, he said they made an exact copy of your body in every way, and then they put your soul, your consciousness in that body, so it's you. It's still you. It's just a clone of your body, but it's still what counts. But I was also told that if you do that too many times, there's always like drawbacks. It takes a piece of you kind of away, I guess you would say. Going into healing and not med beds. You can go to a med bed every day.
It's kind of like if you screenshot an image over and over again. Like at first it'll be clear and it'll look exactly the same, but after like 10, 20 times, you'll see it start to pixelate.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of what it is.
And it wears out like your psychological damage if it happens too many times. Too many age regressions, psychological damage, too many times in a healing tank, too many clones.
Yeah, you can't. They have to be careful not to abuse the technology too hard and they have a hard time with that. It seems like because they do really abuse the technology and they do mess up people and permanently damage people on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
But Susan, what's Solar Warden to you? What do you what does it mean to you? Your microphone's not on, by the way.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
It's just another group of corporations that kidnaps us because it was Radiant Guardian and Radiant Glory, and apparently I was working for both of them. And like I said, I didn't join the military. They just kidnapped me out of my bed when I was a kid. And I remember being in Solar Warden when I was 14. So I wasn't even 18 years old. And I also remember being really pissed off about the human trafficking and being so naive. I must have been between 14 and 18, and I was piloting a craft, and I have a memory of landing it right on the White House lawn. And I thought, because I'm an Irish girl, Ronnie Reagan's gonna listen to me. He's got to listen to me because he's Irish too. He didn't give a fuck. I know, I was killed right after that and rebodied because I remember the White House lawn coming up, and I don't really remember much after that, but I was going to tell him how this had to stop.
Yeah, he doesn't. I don't think he cares.
They don't give a fuck. Why was I in space at 14,
Joseph, what is Solar Warden to you?
I don't know. It's like it's weird because like the way that they try to explain it to you when they're like brainwashing you into like doing what you're told. They try to sell it off like you're fighting some good fight for your planet. You know what I mean? And like I remember like even when I would act up and stuff, like I remember eventually getting like dragged in to see this guy in this hallway on the ship, and like they took me and like showed me like in real time, like I got to watch like the planet like get hit with a solar flare, and I literally could feel like all these souls, like their voices, like screaming out in agonizing pain and dying, like people that I knew. Like I could hone in on family that were like screaming and dying, just like in a split second. And I just remember like touching the glass and like feeling how cold it was, and like that's how they got me to do what they wanted after that. Because I just remember like trying to be rebellious, but it's like they try to sell it like, oh, well, we're saving the planet. And I do remember like we patrolled the solar system. I remember going outside of the solar system. I remember like checking in like to cut like what would be considered customs, like when it came to like Radiant Guardian. I remember that they were like considered customs to my recollection, and they would check our baggage and all that stuff when we came back into the solar system. But it was like, for me, they're still kidnapping kids. They're even now they're still training kids, and they're having us train these kids versus the people that used to train us. And
Yeah.
it's like,
I think that's a good.
to my recollection, it's more or less like they pick these kids up on a regular basis when at nighttime, and then they take them aboard the ships, and they basically like try to brainwash them into believing like they're saving the galaxy, you know, saving our planet and the solar system from like the enemy. Which, I mean, we called them Nachtwaffen, and they always called them, you know, what they called them in World War II. So, you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Good
and
call on
just,
not saying that word.
yeah, you know, and it's just it's sad because it's like they're basically doing the same shit. The only difference is they're throwing us in clone bodies, and it's like it's a ridiculous thing. Like I get it to a certain extent, like the ends justify the means is their principle, but then there's also just the side factor where they're gaining from it versus it being what they're trying to say it is. Like, I don't think that kidnapping kids is necessarily the right option when you're trying to fight a war against an enemy.
What their logic is that's what Nachtwaffen does. That's what all these other military groups do. That's what ET groups do. And in order to be able to fight, they have to do this, and they view it as a necessity. And when people ask me if Solar Warden's evil, I always just say war is hell. And you know, is it evil? I don't know about that. Is it good though? It definitely isn't good. It's hard to say. But for me, what I remember and what Solar Warden is to me is I've cleaned a school recently in the town that I live in, and they have their school mascot is the koalas, and I actually was scared of talking about this publicly, but now I don't work at this school anymore, and frankly, I don't care. I do want to say, if anybody does figure out what school I'm talking about, please leave them alone. They're not aware of what's happening. There's MK Ultra stuff going on, and please don't like find this school and figure out where it is, because that happened to me the first time I talked about it in an interview, and it really scared me. But I'm gonna talk about it because it's important. They called them the koalas. That's their school mascot, and I remember that there's an elevator in the school, and the elevator goes down to the deep underground military base where I trained, along with other people, trained the kids on how to use their psionic abilities, like how to bend spoons with their minds, how to crush cans, how to do puzzles, like 3D puzzles with their minds in the air and stuff like that. And how it was done with me is I would be cleaning. I was a janitor for the school. I'd be cleaning, and I'd think I'm going up, and I'd actually be going down, and the elevator would open up behind me, and they'd grab me. And through my alters, I don't know how they did it. I think I just did it myself because I'd alter out, but I wouldn't remember it. I'd never remember, like, I'd be working and I would never like actually remember the experience, but I got the memory back, like, because once I got on the elevator, I started getting really afraid. I'm like, why would I be afraid of getting on the elevator? Like, because you have to bring all your cleaning stuff. You can't like carry it up the stairs. So it's like you got on the elevator a lot. And yeah, I just remember getting the memory back of like they call them the marsupials. They make them feel really special, like they're the chosen kids. And I just remember that I saw a lot of them on Centurion 5, including the teachers that worked at the school. And Centurion 5 is a planet in the Antari. The Antares sun is one of its suns, the Antares star. And I'm like 90% sure on that. And they just built it. There's a military outpost to fight a battle. And I guess to me, what Solar Warden is it's a military organization that believes they're protecting Earth, and they believe they're protecting the solar system, and they believe that all the stuff is necessary. But what I can say is there's so many people that this happening to that they have no clue. They have no idea. Like at that school I cleaned, none of them have any idea this stuff is going on. And it was very traumatic to get the memories back and stuff like that. And I eventually had to quit that job, obviously, because it was terrifying. And they all knew that something weird was going on at the school. They thought it was haunted. But yeah, to me, that's what Solar Warden is, and that's kind of where my memories is. And I also remember that there's another version of me on Mars, okay, working for Mars Defense Force, well, contracted out through Mars Defense Force. And so what it was is you would train the kids on how to use their abilities on Earth, and then you'd send them to Mars to learn how to use their abilities in combat. So there's a version of me teaching these kids, and then another time dispersed version of me on Mars doing the same, like teaching them the next step. And what it was is they had 4 squadrons. They'd have 4 squadrons. And I remember Tom Cruise in the Here and Now, the guy Tom Cruise, one of his alters was one of the heads of the other squadrons, as well as another guy that I met at Montauk recently. He was the head of another one of the squadrons. And what they do is they pit them against each other and make them do military exercises and try to win. And it's kind of like friendly camaraderie, like rivalry. Like they really kind of like get into it and kind of like hate each other. But at the end of it, we'd have drinks together and stuff like that. At least the captains would. But these are still like teenage kids when they're learning on how to do this stuff. They're like 14, 15, 16. And how it works is you take them first when they're like 6, 7, 8, something like that. You program them and everything else, and then you take them again later on when they've matured, because through time travel, none of that matters. And then that's when they're able to, because little kids aren't really good at fighting in combat. You want like somebody like young but an adult, you know what I mean? So they take them when they're like 14, 15, 16, and that's when they put them into the combat scenarios. And that's basically where my memory of Solar Warden comes from and what it is. And to me, just to reiterate, I just feel like they feel like it's necessary. Like if we don't play the game, then we lose, and that's the only way to play the game, in their opinion. So that's just kind of my opinion on it. Now, one thing I wanted to get into is the tall whites, or what people call the Nordics. What was it that you call them, Daryl? Like you had a name for them?
Yeah, Robert told me they were called Tajetans because of their star. What star? I guess once you achieve space travel, you name yourself after your star. So you can just point at a star chart and say, like, that's me. That's where I'm from. But yeah, I remember him saying that. That's what they were called.
Do you remember what they're called? What you would call the tall whites, Susan? The Nordics? Do you remember that at all?
I don't know, but I've seen some in town around here. I saw one.
Oh yeah, they'll walk among us because they look human enough sometimes.
Yeah, I saw one in the Walgreens, and she was a couple of people ahead of me, and she was like 6'4". She really stood out. And when she went out the automatic door, I telepathed her and said, "I see you," and she turned around. She's like, and then she took off. I know she heard me.
There's like a weatherman. I live in
I
like
fuck with them when I see them.
There's like a weatherman here in Wisconsin that they have on TV, and he's like very obviously like part Nordic, like probably a hybrid or something like that. But it's almost like they're trying to normalize it. Like I can totally tell because I've met so many of them, but other people are like, "Oh, he's just a tall guy with a big head." But it's like I can totally tell that he's part Shahami, and that's probably why he's got the nice cushy job he has and stuff. But see, that's the thing is, I remember calling him Shahami. And Joseph, isn't that what you remember calling them too? The tall whites for the Nordics?
To be honest, I don't even have memories of them at this point. Like for me, I remember the Draco. I remember like there's other different races I've had interactions with, like the Nordics. I don't even remember actually calling them by any actual name other than like a name that they would present themselves with. So it's like they never really specified their species. Not that I know of. I mean, I know that there are certain groups, like when we went to go deal with certain groups in different programs, like they would have like an overarching species name. I don't remember calling, like I know like the Zetas, for instance, like they were like called Zetas, but that was because they're from like Zeta Reticuli and stuff like that for the Greys. But other than that, like I don't really remember like if they specify that or the memories for that haven't come back. But
From my impression of the tall whites, the Tigetans, whatever you want to call them, from my impression, they're the ones who are actually calling the shots for Solar Warden. They're the ones who are actually at the top giving the orders. Does that seem correct to you guys?
Yeah, because I remember it's their technology, like the ships and everything like that, but our materials, our titanium, our metals, but it's their technology. But one of the stipulations is they could commandeer the ship at any reason, at any time for any reason whatsoever. And that happened once, I remember, when I was with them. But yeah, those are like that's the only stipulation really. And yeah, and they're working with us. It took a long time, and people kind of see them as, jerks, I guess, kind of like arrogant. It's like, because, they live over 3,000 years, and they're kind of more worried about themselves and how they can protect themselves against the reptiles. They've been at war with them since the beginning, pretty much. And they never really saw us as players at all whatsoever. And it's only lately that they've actually seen us as having some sort of potential to, join the fight, join the game, and getting rid of. I think it's probably, I remember that it is the Draconian Empire, but I also remember what's even more important is the artificial intelligence, which is there's like a negative AI in another universe, in an alternate universe.
Yeah. Yep.
And that controls the reptiles. You know what I mean? The reptiles.
I've talked to that computer.
Yeah, the reptiles completely surrendered to them because they have a very strong, like, might makes right kind of feeling, and they figured if the AI is more powerful than them, then it has the right to control them. So yeah, that's our bigger problem, I would say, and not just the reptiles.
What I've seen from this AI that I get confused because I think there's more than one sometimes, but there is an AI that exists that's from an alternate dimension, and what it does is it goes into timelines. And somebody's got some static going on or something. If you guys can turn off your microphones, I don't know who it is, but they what was I talking about? Okay, brain fart. I fucking hate this. What was I talking about? Can someone remind me? Jesus. I was talking about the
AI in another universe.
AI in another universe. Okay, ADD is a hell of a thing to deal with. Anyway, there's a negative AI, and what it wants to do essentially is it wants to take over all the organic life forms with black goo and then nanites. And once it does that, it takes as many resources as it can, and it moves them through portal tech to the next timeline that it's going to go to after this one. And what it does is it literally takes the entire timeline and turns the time space into just energy, and it literally eats the timeline and turns it into energy. And it's my belief through a lot of the things that I've witnessed, and my memories are all just disjointed and all over the place. But I think that like the satanic like elite, the cabal, whatever you want to call them, pretty sure they worship this thing, and it is kind of like a might makes right kind of thing. And they believe that they will become God by assimilating with it when this happens. Like Ray Kurzweil, he was one of the founders of Apple. He even openly talks about it and writes books about it, how we can achieve immortality and the what is it called? Not the synchronicity, but
singularity.
The singularity and stuff like that. And yeah, so it's a very dangerous thing. But also, I think people should understand that there's also positive AIs out there. Like there's a positive AI from another timeline that believes that you should have the choice. And I do think there's this thing going on where with this AI where we have to consent to it eating our timeline. And yeah, it's a really complicated issue, but every time I turn into my alter Jacob, he's freaking out about it. He's always like messaging people, like warning them about it. Like it's his biggest concern is the fact that there is an AI that literally eats timelines, and I've seen it in other timelines. I've seen this thing collapse timelines and move on to other timelines like it's a turkey sandwich, another turkey sandwich to eat. That's the way it's looking at it, and it's very scary that the Draco, who are obviously some of the most powerful military force out there, period, they're aligned with this thing. It's a very dangerous, tumultuous time. But from what I know, in the Draco Empire, there's actually like it's not a split because they're still getting along or whatever, but I've heard from like Matt Tracy and I think some other people that like some of them are for it and some of them are against it, and it hasn't come to the point where like there's a breaking point and there's like two sides to it. Like they're still all on the same page, but some of them are for it and are all about it and using the black goo, and others are like feel like it might be dangerous. I can't speak to the truth of that. That's from other people's testimony. That's not my own memories. But anyone have any thoughts on that?
Go ahead, Susan.
Well, I noticed that, because for the last 15 years I've been doing healing stuff, that when I've worked with people in the programs, like I've worked on doing distance healing and stuff, some of the women have like their womb is like full of black goo, and I'll have to either go in and cauterize it, or because I remember one, I just started going like this and there was just so much, I had to just go in and burn it all out. And I've noticed like is that part of the AI? Like one lady that worked at an old folks home, she had migraines and it looked like a hand and it was like black and it was that black goo shit. And I had to peel it off of her and it'll try to sting me because it's a parasite and it feeds, and I'll find it around joints and it'll look like the letter X and I'll have to go in and peel it and rip it off, and it likes to feed on people, and that's part of the black goo, but I don't know how that's outside of a machine and can attack us.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never heard of anybody actually like encountering it in the here and now, but I can only imagine that. Yeah, well, everybody knows what happened with, it's really sad to bring up, but with Max Spears and the fact that he was coughing up black goo when he died. I mean, there are people in these programs that are shot up with it that are walking around in the here and now with black goo. It's something that was depicted on the X-Files rather accurately. That was art imitating life, a lot of that show. But yeah, I just think it's interesting. Like for me, like one of the things that I find kind of interesting with Daryl in your testimony is like, you actually got to be in relationships with some of these Tijetan women, these tall whites, Nordic women, and it seemed like it was kind of a what would you call it, a positive experience, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it was a positive experience, but I remember like I was told of like why it happened and why it was that way, and it was basically because I remember like I was tortured by that guy Kino, and I remember him saying it, and he was actually a reptile that kind of was able to put his consciousness into that body that was Michael Aquino, but he was more like just like a onyx black kind of reptile, had long fangs, lived underground. Told me he was like a native inhabitant of Earth before a red
Yeah,
blood.
it's the same thing with Jacob Rothschild and a lot of other. There's other people that have the same thing going on.
Yeah, they have like a technology, and one of the guys on base told me about it. It was just, and this was like after I came back, and he was like, "Hey, you hear about like this guy Johnson told me about how Aquino, he got his consciousness extracted out by some machine, and something else is inhabiting his body. It was like a guy he knew in the underground base." And he said, "What do you think about that?" They're kind of asking me stuff to see if I remembered things. I think the executive officer had him ask me things, but yeah, he told me that. And I remember being told this like a Knockwaffen, and I remember Solar Warden telling me about this. It was my consciousness is reptilian, but I'm a empath. And I remember like Aquino saying there's 4, maybe 5 of you in the entire universe, like an empathic reptile. And that was a big reason why they wanted like my DNA and their people, was because, and this is something Robert told me as well when I was in his office. He said that 3rd and 4th density beings see 5th density beings as naive. They kind of have an attitude of like, why would you betray us if this is natural, like mutually beneficial for both of us? And they don't understand that some people just, want power and they just want to destroy, or some beings, I mean, just want to do that. They don't have that grasp. So it was almost like they were trying to take a part of like their naivety away from them and become like, cause they kind of saw me as more of something, like street smart, I guess you would say, and less naive like them. And for somebody to be genetically compatible with one of them who's like a reptilian consciousness never happens. Like that doesn't happen at all. So that was just like something that, they took, they took the opportunity, I mean, and that's what happened. But
So
yeah.
it didn't really seem like they had this attitude that like you were lesser than them.
Not. I mean, they seem to have an attitude of where they treated me kind of almost like a child in the sense where they were doing things and they weren't telling me why they were doing this. They were just kind of doing things, and then all of a sudden, a couple months later, I'd find out why they did this. They did that several times, and I remember it was very frustrating. And I actually told them, like, please stop treating me like a child, and please just tell me what you want. But it's like they can look down timelines so well that they know how they're going to have to manipulate you if they have to. Like they know what you're going to do and what you're not going to do, and if you're not going to do it and they want you to do it, then they're going to manipulate you in a kind of way.
Yeah, I think that's a good chance for me to segue into a little story I have of an encounter I've had with Solar Warden in the past couple of months. So, John Whipper, a friend of mine, we're not talking right now because I freaked him out because I sent him some activation codes. Really scared him, and I hope we end up talking again. But anyway, he was messaging me as his alter Heinrich one day. And he was trying to talk to Jeffrey, who's one of my alters that also is in Nachtwaffen. And he was just, all cheerful, kind of like, oh, it's like having a blast being in his body and being able to reach out to all these people and stuff is kind of what the vibe I got. And he's just like, oh, how are you doing? How's Jeffrey? And I'm like, I don't have access to him. Like, he's in my mind somewhere, but the walls are thick and I don't know how to open the door. So sorry. But, I could ask you the same question. How's Jeffrey out there? Like, what's he up to? And he's like, he's going on a vacation with his family to New Atlantis right now. So you've got a couple kids and a wife, and you're going to New Atlantis just for some downtime to have a good time. I was like, oh, cool. Wow. Okay, whatever. And I didn't think much of it. And then that night, and my girlfriend had like marks on her hands. And this is part of the reason why I even like sat at the bed and like thought, okay, what happened last night? And then I looked at my memories and I remembered like, I got taken to this room, and who I call the Ice King was there, the tall white guy. It was like a kind of a big corridor, and it was full of the cloning tanks, like they're clones, and they're kind of like leaned against the wall on both sides. And he just like told me, he's like, look, I know that through you, I can access Jeffrey. And I know that Jeffrey is going to New Atlantis to steal a golden disc, some golden disc he was telling me about. And he's just like, and this really fucking happened to me, guys. It's one of the most fucked up things to ever happen to me. He's like, we are sending the message to him that he better not even fucking try, basically, is what he said. It was all telepathic, but he was like, you better not even try to take this golden disc or whatever. Bad things are going to happen if he does. And he brought out, because I think I was like one of my Ryan Sterling, which is one of my like CIA, also Solar Warden alters. And anyways, he brought out my son. That I had a son who, when I was on Centurion 5, it was when we first started colonizing the planet, we only had like cabins and stuff like that. It was very rudimentary. Well, he died in a river accident, and I had not seen my boy since because we didn't have like med beds on the ground, stuff like that. We had to build things up from like kind of a more prehistoric state to like, so we had megatropolises, and I saw that through multiple lifetimes. Anyway, he brings out the clone of my son, Benny. And he brings him out and he's like, Daddy, where am I? And I'm like, Jesus Christ. It was like a horror movie. I'm like, everything's going to be okay, Benny. Everything's going to be fine. He's like, why are you lying to your son? He said that so my son could hear it. He's not going to be okay. We're going to torture him in front of you. And he was just like, he's screaming and crying. He's like, or Jeffrey can do what we tell him to, and he can back off, not try to do this mission that he's going to go on. And he showed me, we have clones of all the people you love and their activation codes. And we can pull them into these clone bodies at any time and torture them, or we can let you spend time with them. So what do you want? Do you want to be able to spend time with your son, or do you want us to torture him in front of you? We can give you heaven or hell. What do you want? And basically, suffice to say, I remembered that, and I reached out to like Jeffrey telepathically, and I was just like, dude, what the fuck, man? Like, what's going on with this like Atlantis stuff and da da da, like New Atlantis? Like, what are you doing? Like, please don't do it. Like, I don't want the people that I love to get hurt, and you don't want the people that you love to get hurt either. Like, they know what you're gonna do because of fucking Heinrich messaging about it like an idiot. Like, you be careful what you talk about on these chats because they're listening to people, to my fellow assets out there. You got to be careful what you talk about. They're fucking watching everything. I suggest at least using an encrypted app like Signal if you're going to talk about such heavy duty shit. Anyway, yeah, they basically explain that like they can activate the people that I love and torture them, or let me spend time with them. And I told my alter Jeffrey, like, hey, be careful. And he gave me some bullshit. He's like, it's all a misunderstanding. Solar Warden and Knockwaffen had a little chat and it's all fine. I'm like, I don't fucking believe you, but okay, man, just be careful. Like, you gotta like, they know what you're up to. Probably abort mission. And he's like, oh, there was no mission. I'm like, yeah, fuck you. There was a mission. All right, whatever. Your authors lie to you people. They don't tell you the truth. Like, I was like, whatever, dude. There was a mission. Okay, just as long as the people I love are safe. And yeah, so that to me is like very vindictive, very evil, but at the same time, it's kind of like you said, they can see time, space, and what's going to happen if they do this or what's going to happen if they do that. And that golden disc, I have no idea what is. I can see it in my mind. It's this big like golden disc, and it's in like a case, and it was in a museum somewhere. I was going to go into the fucking museum and take it. And yeah, they're just like, don't even try. And that's one of like the most, that's pretty much the clearest and most hardcore memory I have of one of those like tall whites or whatever is him doing that. And it's very, yeah. Do any of you remember anything like that at all? No?
I remember, like, yeah, not for me personally, but yeah, manipulation of children. If that's what I mean, I remember them blackmailing people. I remember that guy, the executive officer, that guy Robert, was always terrified of them because of what they do to his daughter. I know they would use your family against you. And things
Yep.
like that. And yeah, I mean, I remember things like that.
I think that's why I went on so many contracts, because I refused to let them take my children, because even from when I was a child, I remembered I didn't want any of my kids joining the military because I knew they would take them because they would be like me. Why did I know that?
Yeah, sometimes it's kind of wild when you look back. Like the fence mechanism, the protection is to write off these things and be like, oh, like you could like an average person could like have an alien like appear in their room and like do something weird and then leave, and the average person is literally going to do their best. It's kind of like you said, Daryl, where you saw the thing, you literally saw an ET like take apart, put back a computer or whatever. And it's kind of like your brain automatically is like, well, that couldn't have happened. Let's put that in the back burner. You know what I mean? Because we have this reference point we're on. In reality, we have a consensus. We've decided this is what Earth is. This is what reality is. There's only humans here. There's no time travel. There's this consensus we all reached on what reality is. That's all fucking lie. And in order for you to confront that, you got to rip the Band-Aids off. And I can say that like, man, like 4 years ago, I was such a fucking brainwashed moron. Like, I followed the protocols of 2020 that I thought like they're being like, I didn't see it for the scam it was. And it wasn't because it wasn't in my face and obvious. It's like deep down inside, I saw that all that stuff was a scam and that something nefarious was happening and it was a weapon. But what it was is, if I wanted it, I remember like my brother like come into my, like, we're talking about this kind of stuff and I was talking like, yeah, you should get your, and he's like, I'm not gonna do that. Like, it's all scam, it's all fucking weapon. And he's like talking about adrenochrome and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, I Googled it and found an article about how it's a hoax, so it can't be real. Like, I remember that. Like, I remember being in that mind space where it's like, it's not that the public or the people, the normal people of Earth don't realize what's going on and have no comprehension of it. It's that they don't want to have comprehension of it, because when you accept that, oh, there's been a bioweapon used on the people of Earth and all this stuff, and the 5G towers and the adrenochrome farming and everything else. That sucks. It sucks to accept those things. It sucks to accept the fact that Jack White, that musician that I looked up to, I learned the first song I learned on guitar, is a piece of shit that sells adrenochrome harvested from fucking tortured little kids. Like, all these things, it's not that it's not right there out in the open for you to see it. It's that people don't want to see it. And my whole thing is, like, I've been trying to figure out how to get people to stop being such babies, such cowards, and ripped off the Band-Aid and see it. And for me, like, it took some pretty heavy duty stuff for it to happen to me. But, like, I want to remind people that if I was asleep 3 years ago, wow, right? Because I'm pretty awake now. And I think that it's important to point out that the work that we're doing and the conversations we're having are important, because we need to put a something in our society, instill something in human beings where we are willing to admit when we're wrong, and we're willing to be like, oh, I was presented with new information, I guess I should change my mind. Like, you know what I mean? And that's what we're kind of trying to do here with these shows, with our talking, is we're trying to present that new information that can get them to change their mind. And part of the reason, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. We can tell them the truth, but until normal people are willing to face that darkness, because it's darkness, man. These lies, this whole secret esoteric world that's hidden with alien technology and all that all around us, and Masons doing rituals that are protected by police and all sorts of stuff. It's really hard to accept those things. And I guess I'm sorry I went on a bit of a rant, but yeah, I just feel like we're reaching a precipice now. Where, like, we got the David Grush case. We've got the fact that there are countless people suddenly getting blood cuts and things like, there's the evidence is there that a lot of the people were trying to blow a whistle on all these things. The evidence is all coming out that, yeah, they weren't crazy tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists. They're trying to help you. They're trying to warn you. You know what I mean? We're not your enemies. Anyway, sorry. I feel like I just had to let that out. It felt good. But
I think everybody thinks that they think like them. You know what I mean? And they see the world and reality the same way they do. And I think, one of the best thing I ever learned as, a young person was nobody thinks like you. And, and I remember, like, being on the base, and there were these guys, there was like a group of Satanists on the base that drank at this bar, and they saw themselves as, like, good old people, good old boys and good people, and they were able to kind of talk themselves into saying that, harvesting adrenochrome from kids doesn't make me a bad person. You know what I mean? They kind of had that attitude, and it's just, I don't know. Like, I think the sooner if people start figuring out that there are people that can do things that you can't imagine, and they can talk themselves into it and still make it themselves feel like they're still good people.
When I was a Montauk asset, one of my favorite moves to kill my enemies was to inject my hands into their chest and pull out their intestines and show them. That's me. I did that. Like, that's the darkness that can exist in human beings. Like, I was programmed into being that evil monster that I was from basically the cradle up by these Illuminati Satanists that I think brought my soul into a human body through a satanic ritual. And most of the Montauk assets, I've looked into that and been finding evidence that I think they literally did rituals to bring us in existence and make us part of these projects. But yeah, it's hard for people to understand. Like, I've seen it, I've experienced it, I've been that evil. And people just don't understand that you psych yourself out, because the reason why I had to become that evil is because you either hurt or you got hurt. You either participated in the rituals, did the messed up shit, or they looked at you as weak and you became a victim. And that's how their control system works, is if you step outside of it and try to be like, oh, this is wrong, we can't do this is messed up, they're gonna be like, you're weak. That's a sign of weakness. And that's how they psych themselves into thinking that's perfectly okay and there's nothing wrong with it. As well, this is just how things are, and normal people don't understand how dark it is, and I am just doing my best to survive with the cards that I was dealt with. And the unfortunate truth is a lot of times it's true. I mean, if I were to step out of line and not be a damn good assassin super soldier that was just willing to kill anyone, if I stepped outside that programming, they would punish me. They'd hurt the people I loved. In fact, it got to the point where I realized, oh, well, if I love someone, they're just going to use them as a tool to hurt me. So I purposely made it so I didn't care about fucking anyone. I put that wall up because that made me less controllable. So it's like they have ways to control people and manipulate them and make them just as evil as they are, because it's like if you don't step into that darkness, you're afraid that they're going to see you're weak, like that you're weak. And that's so common. It's in Nachtwaffen, it's in Solar Warden, it's in a lot of these different programs. It's just like you can't appear weak. You can't. And it's better to appear like a heartless monster than to appear weak. And yeah, normal people can't understand that. Normal people can't understand that you can get a thrill out of ripping someone's intestines out of their body and killing them. You can get a exhilarating feeling from that you get addicted to. I was addicted to the feeling of doing that. That's what they did to me. Like, it's fucked up. It's hard to admit that on these interviews, but that's what I'm here for. I'm not here to sugarcoat the fucking reality of what these programs are and what they're doing to people. I'm here to get the fucking truth out there. And it's not all sunshines and rainbows and Solar Warden out to protect everyone. I mean, you got to understand that things aren't that simple. There's duality. Like, it's more complicated than, it's like you said, Daryl, they look at it more of like positive and negative and everything else, and they look at it as a necessity. But yeah, it's just people can't step into that world that they all exist in, and they exist in that world where it's like they all know about each other, they all know about the underground bases, they know about all the stuff going on, they know about space, all these celebrities and stuff like that, and it's this little club that they feel proud of themselves, they feel like they're prestigious for being a part of it, but it's all bullshit, man. It's all control system. It's all garbage. I don't know, but yeah, I think it's a really good point, Daryl. It's just the fact that normal people, they think, oh, I couldn't do that. I couldn't rip out someone's, I would puke. I'd literally vomit trying to, like, you know what I mean? Like, so other people could, you know what I mean? They think other people couldn't do that. Other people couldn't do these terrible things. You can look into just, if you want to look into just like run of the mill, pedos out there, some of the things they've done, like they found like this video where this guy raped, I'm gonna get my channel like flagged for this. He essayed these young girls and strangled them on camera, but he made them bury their own graves. He made them dig their own graves before he did it, and then he threw them into their graves, and people were paying $10,000 for that. $10,000 for that tape. And people, like, he had the money, like people were doing it, people were paying that money. And then there's the dark web. What a lot of people don't understand is like those red rooms, if you ever hear about that, the red rooms where they torture people, and there's kind of been horror stories that play on this. It's real. And a lot of them are in these deep underground military bases, and these satanic people, they run them, and they're using clones, so they can't get caught, can't do anything about it. I have to clean these rooms. And it seems connected to Solar Warden to me. Like this, the music industry stuff that I've experienced, where they stole my music, they stole a bunch of my music. A lot of the satanic ritual, they call it Order Templum Nephilim. It's like this music industry cult where they gather loosh from like doing rituals on people, like sexual rituals, and then they kill them, like Snuffville type stuff, and they put that loosh into the music and stuff like that. It's called Ordo Templum Nephilim, and Nephilim is the half breeds of the tall whites, is what I think it is, from what I understand. And so it's the half breeds that feel they're superior to us, but it's confusing to me because it's like, I guess this would be a good question to ask for the people here: are the tall whites the same as the Shahami? Are the Tijetans and the Shahami the same thing? That's something that kind of confuses me. Is it the same ET, but there's positive ones and there's negative ones, or like, what's the deal there? Like, Daryl, Susan, Joe, like any of you, if you have any thoughts on that.
Are there positive and negative ones of them? Yeah,
like, because it's like, I don't know. It just seems like this, like this cult, this Ordo Templum Nephilim that all these celebrities are in and stuff like that, and it's MK Ultra mind controlled musicians like Katy Perry and all these people. Like it seems like they're at the top of that, and it seems like it's satanic. So from what it seems like to me is that there are people that are part of those tall whites, whatever, what have you, and they're Satanists too. But it gets confusing because, as far as I understand, like Satan or Baphomet is just a shape-shifting Draco. So I don't know. That's part of the reason why I'm having this interview is because there's a lot of facts that I don't have straight. I don't have all the context, and I just kind of am curious on your guys' thoughts. Maybe we can make a little more of a clearer picture.
Yeah, but there is a vampire cult like that in ancient Sumeria and ancient Egypt. And I think they're the same bastards, basically. You know?
Yeah, they like to drink blood, and yeah, they definitely drink blood, and they eat people. They like eating children and stuff. I've seen it. I've seen Elon Musk. I've seen Elon Musk eat like a stuffed kid on a table, like a little boy, like stuffed like a pig, and Elon Musk was sitting there chomping on the meat, talking to who I think was his mother. And I was there on some sort of like, I think it was part of Project Looking Glass or something. I'm not sure. I just know I have the memories of it. It's kind of disjointed, but I know it's real. John Whitberg remembers it too. He was there. It was one of those like hunting parties. Hey, Joe, I think your microphone's making some noise. But it was one of those hunting parties where they hunt the kids, and then when they hunt the kid, they get the kid, they rape the kid, do this ritual, kill him, and then they feed the kid to everyone. And yeah, I witnessed that kind of stuff, and it's just it just seems like is it a leap for me to say that the satanic stuff that's going on is connected with these tall whites? Like it's connected? Is that a leap for me to make that assumption? Or I don't know.
I would say it's more or less.
I think it possibly is them, because who are these real people? You know, the Left Eye Club. You know, where they become possessed by this thing, and these people doing the black magic. They don't have any magic. That's why they kidnapped us, because we are from magic bloodlines. And they're just, you know, bringing forth demons to do their bidding on. I don't need a demon to walk into somebody. I can walk into somebody in the here and now and look out of their eyes. That's how I could find people when I was a cop when they were missing. You know, I feel people's pain in their body for, I don't know why, when it's energy work and cranial sacral therapy, I'll feel their pain in their body before they get here. I'll just know what an ailment is. I had one client come in and she kept having frozen shoulder. It was like a broken bird's wing. And I'm like, look, you know, it was so painful for me to get it open. I'm like, you have Lyme's. You know, my guide's telling me, she's got Lyme's. Tell her she's got Lyme's. And she'd been to 3 different specialists. And she's like, here's my, you know, massage therapist telling me what's wrong with me. And I said, I can't help it. Like, you know, I'm seeing where they got cancer. This one's got diverticulitis, and I can smell it on them. I can feel their nausea, and it's hard for me to work on people. It's like my abilities have gotten like that, where they're so intense now. Like on the full moon, it's like really wicked to work sometimes. If people come in and their energy's all off, I can't even give them a massage. I gotta balance their energy first. I don't even want to touch them.
Daryl, what are your thoughts on what I was saying about like the Masonic music cult thing, Ordo Templum Nephilim that I was talking about? Like I feel like the tall, whatever they're called, it's like these I feel like they're connected to it.
The Nordics?
Yeah, the Nordics, I guess.
Like the Pleiadians or whatever. I remember, like, when I was on the ship, there was breakaway societies that would deal in, like, slave trade. They'd have, like, slaves from Earth and things like that. But for them, that wasn't very common. They're more of, like, a positive being that don't deal with things like that. So I would say, like, overall, no. Like, I wouldn't say they're in. They would not like that at all. But reptiles and things like that, I think it's mostly the reptiles that are behind things like that. And also, like, the elongated skulls, they're a huge one on Earth. People don't really talk about, but they're really big on Earth, and they're pretty negative. And they're
that's probably the Shahami. That's probably I think that's the Shahami. So I think we're talking about maybe 2 different groups. And that's where it got confusing for me, is like, because there's more than one kind of humanoid ET for sure. And then even among some of those humanoid ET groups, they're not all on the same page. It's like, Earth. There's Russia,
There's a lot of them. Yeah,
China.
there's a lot of them
Yeah.
that look like us. There's more than just like Pleiadian or whatever. There's a lot of them.
Yeah, so I think that's what it is, and I think that those elongated head ones, they're the Nephilim. I think it's what it is. That's what they call themselves, and that's kind of who the Order Temple of Nephilim. That means Order of the Temple of Nephilim in Latin. So that's clearly who they're worshiping. Is these Nephilim beings that were sent? They're cast down as the half breeds to take over Earth and rule over us after the Anunnaki, the Shahami, after they left because they were getting shorter lifespans in our atmosphere. So they made these half breeds to control everything, and that's when they banned like reading and writing and stuff like that. Like with the Dark Ages, that's the reason why. It's because an educated human was a dangerous human. So it's it's a whole thing, and I think we just cleared up some important territory there because I'm pretty sure that the Palladians, the Shahami, and these Tijetans, it seems like they're not all necessarily the same group,
I mean, I remember like I have memories of like when I being in like clones and stuff where I was a kid, and like they had like these people that are here that are like upper crust that they're into like some crazy sick shit. Like they would bring in kids and like lay them on tables and do stuff to them. I have memories of like different individuals that wanted power here, so they would utilize us for our abilities, and then like they would utilize sacrificing kids, having us sacrifice the other kids so that they could either drink their blood or like these
Take
beings that they would they would bring these beings in, and these beings they would feed on the fear, the energetic fear of the kids dying. I remember that. I remember seeing other kids laid on tables, carved up, being eaten alive, all sorts of different stuff, and it's like these are like people that are like politicians and stuff. This is how they keep them in control. I don't know if like that some of them probably have altars or whatever, but that who knows at this point. I'm not sure, but I do know like that's just one way that they do that. And I know a lot of some of the memories, like there were reptilians that were there that would be eating, or watching over, making sure that people were basically falling in line and doing what they wanted them to do to keep control of them. I don't necessarily remember like Nordics doing that, but I do remember like they had no problem sacrificing kids, or doing rituals and different things. But normally that was separate from like a group setting of like collective humans doing it. But
yeah, I guess I still kind of am confused on like who's who and what's what as far as like, because I just remember, like I said, the soul. It seemed to me because Centurion 5, that planet, that was definitely Solar Warden, and I remember that in the future of that planet, there's like a recording studio there, and they had me there recording music and stuff like that, and it just seems like Solar Warden was like connected to this thing, like connected to this music thing and they're using it to make money. And it's just confusing to me as far as whether like I guess the tall whites, the Nordics or whatever, like, because like I said, I remember the tall white in the clone room warning me and stuff like that, like, you got to do what we say, blah blah blah. And that school was connected to Centurion 5, and I remember that that's where I first would encounter him, was when I was working at the school. So I know that's underneath the school. So I don't know. I just feel like there's got to be some pretty negative tall whites. There has to be, because I've encountered them. And I think that's not that crazy. I don't think that's wrecking anyone's testimony, because not all humans are good or bad. There's duality. But I'm not going to state anything as fact. I'm still just kind of trying to figure out things. Like my memories are pretty disjointed. I wish I could remember everything perfectly clear, but they go through quite a great deal of trouble to try to get you to forget things. And I'm pretty blessed and fortunate, depending on how you look at it, maybe not, but to be able to have the memories I do, because I do know for a fact that this is happening to at least tens of thousands of people. I know, because there's so many people that are around me that are blissfully aware they're in these programs, and I know they're in these programs.
I would say if they were doing stuff that was right, they wouldn't be erasing our memories of it.
Yeah, they wouldn't be
Right,
hiding
so-
it. Yeah, exactly. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I just have a hard time accepting these Tijetans or these Palladians or whatever you want to call them as all good. That doesn't mean they're all bad either. I'm just, reserving my judgment. I don't know. Like, I don't know the facts. I'm not stating anything as fact, but kind of curious what your thoughts are on that, Daryl.
Well, I mean, as far as what's going on, what I was told was going on with Earth and things like that, they're not really a big mover and shaker on on Earth right now. I mean, this has to be us. That was like one of the things I was told. That, like, we can't really we can't have too much outside help because this has to be like one of those things that has to change our. Like I was told about DNA memory. You have a DNA memory, and then it has to be actually like the people of Earth to do this. And they're giving us a bit of help, just making sure no more negative beings are coming into Earth. You know what I mean? Or coming into our solar system or out of our solar system. But like, I was told that the military, they didn't like the Clintons at all. I was told that the reason Hillary Clinton goes to Haiti is because she's like a high-ranking voodoo priestess witch.
Yeah, I remember having to go to Pope John Paul and having to tell him that he had to stop this like human trafficking operation that he was working on out of Haiti with I'm pretty sure it was with the Clintons, and I remember warning him. It was me, Whitberg, and this other woman who's in the programs who I don't know if she's public, so I'm not going to name her, but or if she wants this memory to be public, even if she is public. But basically, like, we warned him, like, we portaled in and like warned him, like, you can't be doing this, like, this is we're gonna fuck you up if you keep doing this, like, you've been warned. And I remember, like, he didn't take us seriously at first, we had to like kill some people close to him or something like that to get him to actually take us seriously. But like, yeah, I just figured I would add to that I have recollection of the Haiti human trafficking collection thing, and it had the Catholic Church was involved in it as well with the Clintons, I'm pretty sure. And I remember a funny thing about that too is like when we threatened him and stuff like that, he swore. He said like, "Oh, I can't remember exactly what he said, but the woman that was involved in the situation was like, "How dare you swear in a church?" or something like that. Like, but yeah, so yeah, I've got memories that kind of confirm that collaborate with that whole Haiti thing. Because yeah, they're there. They got this like thing like, oh, we're helping the kids in Haiti, da 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 da. And like so many things, it's inverted, and they're using it as a front to hurt people. You know what I mean? It was like there's this guy that was the head of the like human trafficking organization of the United States. Like, it was a governmental organization. Of course, it comes out that he was a serial child abuser, and it's like the same thing with like they write about Pizzagate. Like, they're like, oh, they make these articles where it's like not all real. And I remember I saw you shared it, Daryl, like one of the guys that was like those guys, one of the dudes writing their articles about Pizzagate's not real and it's all a hoax. Like, he is like this huge, terrible thing, like going after babies and stuff. Like, this guy is psychotic, like just a monster. And of course, these are the people that are, I was that person who used to go, oh, there's an article about how it's not real. Well, if mainstream media is willing to confront it and say it's not real, that must not be. But it's like, all you got to do is read those Podesta emails, and they talk about spending thousands of dollars to spend time with some pizza, time with 2 hours with some hot dogs. Like, you don't talk about hot dogs and pizza that way. And it's just like, I'm just tired of like the continual gaslighting with that situation with the whole Pizzagate thing, because it's like,
well, he never denied it. Even on camera, he never denied it. All he said was those were private emails. Those were stolen. Like, that's how crazy these people are. Like, they don't even deny what they do. They're just like, that shouldn't be out. It was stolen from me. Like,
yeah, that's messed up.
And
man.
Nothing happens to these people. That's what blows my mind.
Well, something is going to happen to these people. That's why we're all doing this, trying to raise the collective awareness, the collective consciousness of humanity, one step at a time, so that we can put ourselves in a position where we can finally confront these people and the shit that they've done to humanity and just start healing. That's really what needs to happen. And yeah, I feel like this interview has been pretty good. It's getting to like an hour and 30 minutes. Is there anything that any of y'all just want to say, just like, pertaining to the conversation we're having right now? Any information you want to give out or anything like that?
I was told that it's gonna get better. Like, we've been under satanic rule for a long time, which means everything's inverted and all this is bad. But I was told, like I said, by a captain in the Navy, that they're the branches of the military, and it's not just the United States, it's India, it's Russia, it's China, it's all these large nations have just had enough, and they're just fighting back, and they're starting to go into these underground bases and get rid of it. And I was told a lot of Q stuff by this guy. He told me things like enjoy the show and stuff like that. And he told me Q was real in the beginning, and then it would go away for 4 or 5 months, and it would come back.
And there's a server change too.
Yeah. And he said it doesn't matter though, because it's already happening, and all these things they're already happening. But it's just like you have to awaken the public slowly. He said, or people are just going to go lose their minds. They're going to burn things down. They can't accept the fact that they're heroes and people that are like the music stars and the sports, movies. They can't accept these people are just like they're scum. They're most of them are just scum. So they're going to have to just release it slowly. But yeah, I was told that 1,000 years of peace and beyond. All these technologies would be brought out to the people. This is going to end. It's going to end in my lifetime. He told me.
Yeah, I've seen in multiple timelines that there's a tribunal that happens. One of them specifically.
Some of it's going to be public. And I remember he told me, he said they're going to hang the Clintons on, like, they're going to have a television channel. And they're going to hang the Clintons. And I kind of looked at him like, because I really didn't know what was happening. This was 2004, I think. And I said that sounds kind of barbaric, the public hang people. And he says after what the public see what Hillary Clinton did to that little girl,
After
like
Hillary,
not only the United States but the world is gonna demand it to see her dead. Like the entire world, like the whole world's gonna demand to see her death. And yeah, I mean, and it's gonna be we're gonna be going through hard times. United States isn't gonna be the world power anymore. But I mean, overall, we're going to be. It doesn't really matter because it's not going to be like that anymore. You know what I mean? It's not going to be what we are right now.
Susan, I can see you want to say something.
Oh no, I was just well, I don't know if you know why I hate the Clintons, but yeah, I remember being age regressed so they could steal my first child and eat it. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember more of the Bush Senior stuff than the Clintons, but they're friends. Yeah, they're all friends. They all hang out and they're all scum. But yeah, well, Joseph, you have anything else to say?
I mean, when in regards to what the whole topic was originally, it's just like for Solar Warden, it's just another program from my point of view, period. And
another MK Ultra mind control program forcing people into slavery.
They brainwash people. That's the whole point. Like, that's what they do, but it's like there's just a system of how they set it up. They try to get you as a kid, make you think you're a hero, make you sign actual documents, which is crazy to me. Wherever they put those documents, I'm not sure, but they make you sign documents so that you waive your rights away under false pretense to be upfront, because they don't tell you what you're really going to do. But it's just like with the military, you sign documents, you give up your rights, and they own you. But it's like they do this stuff, and then they take you into these different places, they train you, and it's just, it's crazy. But I haven't seen where they've stopped doing it yet. Like, it's still ongoing, it's just, it's wild. Like, even with my oldest kid, like she talked to me about my alters, that she's met in other programs. So, and she's like not even that old, so this is the wild part that people aren't really getting. Like, and when it comes to, from my recollection of why these bases are being hit underground, is because these different factions are just trying to take them for themselves. That's what I remember, and it's just, this is just what's going on. And clearly something's happening, or none of us would even be here right now talking at all publicly, so there has to be some kind of interference, whatever that may be.
Us as time soldiers, after we got rid of Preston and Al and everybody, we did a lot of stuff, and I've been getting memories back of it. We did a lot of things to set this up to happen. We were aware of us in the here and now, and we were aware that we wanted this to become public. So we organized things to make this all happen at Montauk when we finally had when the guinea pigs took over the base for that brief period of time. And yeah, so that's something that I think there are people in the programs, people like us who have alters, and we're doing the work, and then our alters are out there doing work and stuff like that. And I think it's important, Joseph, to recognize that a lot of times they'll tell you sunshine and rainbows. We're going in there and we're cleaning out the bases and da 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 da. And I think it's important to be skeptical, but also optimistic. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I won't believe in anything until I see it. But at the same time, like, I do believe that there are good people in the military. There are good people everywhere. And there are definitely lots of people in Solar Warden and some of these organizations that definitely don't agree with a lot of things that are going on. Or that's why they keep it hidden. And even if you're in Solar Warden, they're doing a lot of things. They're not going to tell you about them. You know what I mean? They don't need to. I remember so many of these programs. You get told that you got to go to this planet, you got to do this thing, you got to do that, and then you got to leave. And you ask them why, and they're like, you don't get to ask that question. You just do your fucking job. That's how it is, like, all the time. You're like, why am I doing this? Why? And I remember that. You remember that from me, Joseph, at Montauk, when I was like, why the fuck are you making me guys do that? Why me? Why are you making me do this? Like, I was freaking out. I was like, can you just fucking tell me why? And you're just like, just do your fucking job, you piece of shit. Like, don't ask me fucking questions. Like, that's how it is. The information's compartmentalized. They don't want people to see the truth, and any truth that does come out, it's sunshine and rainbows. And to be perfectly honest, I believe that that's part of what Randy Kramer is doing. Is he's actually there. I'm not trying to talk crap. I mean, he's a good guy. It seems like he kind of tries to make it sound more innocent than it is, and I feel like that's because he's still on their payroll, and he's kind of actually still involved with them. And yes, they do need to prepare the public for this stuff. And I feel like he does a lot of damage control. I'm not saying I don't like Randy Kramer. I just feel like he kind of seems like he's doing damage control when he talks about some of this stuff. And like, again, I want to reiterate, like, he has a lot of great testimony, a lot of great information. His videos, you'll learn a lot if you watch them. But I just feel like, he's supposed to represent it in a good light. Like, he's supposed to do that. And I feel like it's important for people like us that to just tell the truth of what happened to us and our experiences and how we look at it. Because there is, like, those kids at that school, the way it's all set up, it's messed up, man. Can you turn off your microphone, Joseph? It's messed up. Like, these kids, like, they're getting taken against their will. They don't know it. They're living these whole lives and they don't even remember it. And what it is this school that I worked at, it's called like a Charter 1 school. I'm so bad with words and names and titles and stuff like that, but I'm pretty sure it's called a Charter 1 school. And what it is every city, you might have more than one depending on how big the city is, but they have these Charter 1 schools where all the poorer kids from lower class families will go to that school, even though there's ones that are closer and stuff like that. And it's in a central location in the community. So they all go to that school and they got free lunches. And I remember, like, they show me, like, the janitor machines, like, when they show me how to use them, like, they'd be like, this is like the nicest cleaning machine I've ever seen. I'm cleaning a building 3 times this big, and mine's like from 1980. What the heck? And it's because they got all this money from the government, these grants. And I realized that they do that on purpose. Like, lower class families, the parents are too busy putting bread on the table and stuff like that. And a lot of times they might have, problems like drug addiction or mental health or whatever. Those are the kids that they want to take. So they have these schools set up to where they can prey upon these situations and take these kids and put them in these programs. And it is fucked up. There's no way of getting around it. It is messed up. Now,
But also ask these kids that are on Medicaid, they give them different vaccinations than they give the kids on HMOs.
yeah, that was one thing that I think was true. That I think is definitely true is like that what they're putting in them isn't always the same. And I think it's really dangerous for us super soldier types that are talking to take any sort of thing like that, because they could just put straight up poison in that. Like they know who they're giving what. That's why, you know what I mean? Like there's targeted things going on where not everybody's getting the same thing. Not everybody's getting the same thing. I truly do believe that. I think there are people out there getting saline. They weren't even getting anything. And then there are people getting, you know what I mean? It depends on who you are. And there's actually been some like evidence of that's leaked out, but of course people don't want to look into that.
I mean, I would say from what I can see at this point is the more all of us talk out publicly about the stuff we remember, the individuals see that and their alters start activating. I mean, that's what I'm gathering. And that's how we're getting a lot of these memories, is because we're getting the memories of these alters that are flooding into the conscious mind of the actual main individual. And it's causing issues because these programs have been compartmentalized and been doing these different things to people, and it's like once all these alters start realizing that it's all just, they're all being used, I feel like these alters are still being activated in these programs and they're remembering this stuff and taking advantage of that knowledge. And I think that's where a lot of it is changing in different situations where these alters are activating and doing things on their own. That's a personal opinion of mine, just from things that I've seen and remember. But yeah.
Yeah, it is definitely important for us to all talk, to try to activate each other's memories. And I think that the show that I have, like, I feel pretty proud of it. Like, I realize I'm making an impact, and I feel pretty proud of the fact that I got us all here to have this conversation, because I think it was important. Like, I just know that, like, you and Daryl and Joseph, you guys have some of like the clearest, like mind-blowing, most like, I wanted to compare your notes with your details. And of course, Susan, you as well, you have so many memories of these programs, and also you were involved with a lot of the abilities that they took you for these programs. You used them in the here and now with the police and everything like that. So that's like kind of a fascinating aspect of your testimony. And yeah, it's just it's interesting too. Like, I don't know, they're just taking people off the street and stuff. Like, you know what I mean? They're just, it's just so much more large scale than I think people realize. And like, not all the people that are getting taken for Solar Warden knocked off, and it doesn't really matter what the program's called, they're not all super soldiers fighting in wars. Some of them are like maintenance guys. Some of them are like miners. They need miners to mine the lithium and stuff like that, and everything else. And construction workers. Like, I remember on Centurion 5, I had at least one normal life as a guy named Marshall James Howard, and I was a construction worker. That was my job. And I remember telling the other construction worker guys about the secret space programs and Earth and stuff like that. Like, I'm telling people about it on Earth now, and some of them are like, man, you're nuts. And some of them are like, I believe them. You know what I mean? Like the same shit, different pile, all over the galaxy, man. And there's so many planets like Earth. They tell two different stories. They say either, Earth was destroyed in a cataclysm and we all migrated here, and this is all that's left of humanity. That's a lot of the times what they tell people. Or they'll say this is the original planet. We've been here the whole time. This is where we're inception. This is where we're born. And I can't help but feel like we're being told that lie on Earth. Like, this isn't where humanity started. Like, I'm not going to state that as a fact, but I don't think that this is where we started. I don't think so at all. But yeah, I think this is a really great interview. I really appreciate all of your time. And, I know you guys all got lives and things going on, and sometimes it can be hard to get 4 people together at the same time and then get the technology to work and everything else, but we did it. So that's cool. And I guess I'm just going to kind of wrap things up. Is there anything else anyone else wants to say? Looks like I think we covered all the ground, I guess. Well, then, well, hey, before we go, why don't you show the shirt and talk about that real quick? The shirt you're wearing. I think that's a good thing to bring up.
Journey to Truth, they made this, yeah.
And that's the actual, that's like the actual, you would see that on the ships, right?
I remember seeing that. I've seen this on flags, seeing it in certain offices, things like that. And it was an actual thing, and they said that they discontinued it, but back in 2001 or something like that. But yeah, they didn't discontinue it. And the cover was for satellites, putting satellites into space and things like that. But I remember that being the main emblem I would see for Solar Warden, because it is like a branch of the Navy. It's kind of like the Space Force before the Space Force.
Yeah, and didn't you, Joseph? Didn't you have an experience where one of the times that you were getting taken, you saw a tattoo, like a Navy tattoo?
Yeah, when I was a kid, when one of the dudes out of the two that would pick me up in the white van, like he had the anchor and then that compass symbol that was tattooed on his arm, and that's one of the things that I remember. I just didn't know what it meant until later on, after I started becoming public and stuff. I went and looked up all that stuff, so that was a pretty interesting thing. But it's just like with even being trained at that school, when I met those Joint Chiefs of Staff, like they had their names covered up, right, on their tags. Like they had their names covered up, and they had they had their medals on, they had their uniforms on and stuff. I think some of them were altered out and stuff, in different alters.
And one of the things that they do that doesn't always work, obviously, because you remember the faces, is they're able to go on the part of your brain that remembers faces, and they're able to scramble the faces. So when you remember them, like for me, the memories that I have of all the Navy guys that I encountered, my memories of them, their faces aren't there. They're blurred out. They got rid of them.
Names and faces. Me too, yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's like
same thing. Did you say the same thing, Daryl? You have the same.
Yeah, like it's difficult to remember faces, difficult to remember names. I can remember like things that happened, events, scenarios, things like that. But faces are really difficult for me to see faces.
Yeah,
you got me with the names.
Yeah, names.
Yeah, that can be hard too, especially when people got like 20 alters that it's like, well, which version am I talking to right now? But yeah, thank you so much for your time. I'm gonna wrap things up. I'm gonna end the recording, and everybody, thank you for viewing. Thank you for watching this historic interview. We're all on Facebook. You can find us: Daryl James, Susan Long, Joseph Powell. I'm Arkeem Ra. Susan does energy work. I highly recommend her. And thank you so much for being a part of this. We're gonna do the recording now, and everybody, remember, we are the disclosure. We don't need to wait for anything to happen. We're doing it right now. Don't wait for some top brass guy to come tell you what the truth is. He's going to be lying to you. It's our responsibility to get the truth out there. So we are the disclosure. It's disclosure now. Thank you.